Now, we've talked a bit about our external type connections to our storage devices. Now, not only do we have these cables coming out of our computers that allow us to connect to storage devices, we also have internal connections. The first one we're going to talk about is our SATA connection. Probably going to be the most common type of cable or storage connection cable that you're going to find inside of modern desktops. It's just a standard connection that stands for Serial Advanced Technology Attachment. It allows us to connect to internal hard drives. And also, in addition to our internal hard drives, we have our optical drives and our solid state drives, anything that we may connect to inside the computer. Our first iteration of SATA, our SATA 1, is going to be transmitting at 1.5 gigabits per second. SATA 2, 3.0 gigabits per second. And then our SATA 3 at 6.0 gigabytes a second. Now, these faster speeds inside of our devices are extremely critical, especially when we're running, say, the operating system or loading and saving different files onto our internal hard drives, because the faster we can get that connection, it increases our save speeds and our load speeds from our devices. Now, in addition to internal SATA connectors, we also have internal PATA connectors, which stand for parallel ATA. Our SATA connectors are Serial Advanced Technology Attachment, whereas our PATA is going to be Parallel Advanced Technology Attachment. It was sort of the precluder to SATA, and it's sort of slowly being phased out, but you'll still find it in a good number of older computers that you may encounter, so it's something we need to know about. Our Parallel ATA is also known as an IDE connector. They both mean the same thing. If you hear IDE or if you hear PATA, they're both talking about the same connectors or the same cables. Now, our parallel ATA allows us to have up to 2 devices per cable, 2 devices per interface. Whereas on our serial ATA, it's 1-to-1, one motherboard connection to one device. Whereas on this cable, it's one motherboard connection to up to 2 devices. Our parallel ATA is going to run at either one speed or another speed, depending on our version of the parallel ATA that we're using. We'll be either running at 100 megabytes per second or 133 megabytes per second. And we can see a situation where the more upgraded our connectors will be, the better it is for us in transferring data. But again, PATA connectors, IDE connectors, they're being phased out pretty much by computers today, and we're switching more over to the SATA connectors. Our next type of internal connector that we'll encounter is called a SCSI connector, SCSI. Our SCSI connector isn't only an internal connector. We also see situations where we'll have SCSI connectors that we put in an adapter card, or we have one built into our motherboard that allows us to connect into that externally. SCSI cables are obviously quite a bit different as far as how many devices they can hold on to a single cable, and we actually have 2 major different distinctions between the 2 cables. We have our narrow, which can actually hold up to 7 devices per interface. So one interface on the motherboard is equal up to 7 devices, and that would transfer data at up to 40 megabytes per second. And then we have our wide. Our wide is not only going to transfer at a faster speed, 320 megabytes per second, but it also lets us add more devices to it. We have up to 15 devices. Now, our SCSI connectors rather, allow us to daisy chain devices onto our cable. The cable's gone through several different iterations, and you may see SCSI drives with connectors that this cable actually wouldn't plug into, but they're still considered SCSI, just a newer version. This SCSI connector, as you can see, also has a terminator at the end. These terminators are necessary in this type of cable in particular in order to let the cable know that this is the end. It doesn't go any farther than here. There's no drive past here, so it needs to stop. It needs to stop searching. SCSI drives, such as the one that we have here, plug into this cable, and when you plug the multiple devices into the cable, you actually set jumpers on the device that let the device know where it is located on the cable. The jumpers can vary depending on the type of cable and how we need to set them. So it's important that we keep that in mind and that we take a look in a later video that we'll have about the actual jumpers configurations for SCSI devices. One of the last internal type connections we're going to look at is the floppy connection. When we take a look at our floppy cable, it's going to be another ribbon cable, which looks very similar to either our SCSI or our SCSI or IDE connection. But we're going to notice that it's a bit thinner. Now, another distinctive point on our floppy cable is going to be the twist that we have in the end here. Now, this twist, sometimes we'll see that we only have floppy drive connectors that have two ends on them. They don't have a space for a second connector. This twist is going to be on the end of our last floppy drive. So we don't want to plug in the end with the twist into our motherboard. We want the twist, again, to be plugged into our floppy drive. We don't use floppies too much anymore because we need more space than floppies can allow. But we still use them for recovery, and we still use them in emergency situations, so it's good to know a little bit about the connectors. The floppy connector can actually transmit at up to 1 megabyte per second. In respect to the other devices that we've looked at, such as the PATA or the SATA, and our newer CD drive connectors, that floppy connector really isn't going to give us very much as far as how much information it's transferring through. So again, we use it more for emergency situations or situations where we're going to have to do disk recovery and the only thing we have are floppies available. Floppy connectors can allow us up to 2 devices per interface. So that would be one interface plugged into the motherboard, one place on the motherboard, but the cable has up to 2 interfaces available on the cable that we can plug our floppy drive into.